Hello, my name is Brant. Today is still the 27th day of January 2021. I wanted to talk about the history of Eastern Europe. That is, most don't have the concept of what I'm talking about, so let me explain. I've always been fascinated by this, and let me with international relations because I took foreign policy classes when I was in college, and I saw things that took place. And then I've been watching a series on Eastern Europe history, and I wanted to comment about it because I see it is taking place again, and it has been taking place for quite a long time. Those countries are the countries of Poland, Belarus, um, uh, let's see, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova. Um, let's see the country of Czech Republic, the country of Slovakia, many of the countries that is Slovenia, Serbia, Montenegro, Bosnia, have in some ways been used just about all of their existence since day one, it seems, either by the West or either by the East. There have been some bright spots at one time. At one time, Poland itself was a powerful country itself. Didn't last long. Eventually, the Europeans, especially the Germans, but other Europeans, and also the Russians would come in and eventually bring that government down in Poland because they bought the politicians off who were trying to be a separate unity. At one time, Poland and Lithuania, part of the Lithuanian government, was the powerhouse in a certain age, probably in the 1700s per se, but that also came down. And so I've watched and looked at these things, how these countries have been used as a buffer, and that is militarily, um, and how their governments are supported by the West or by the East, that is from Russia or from the West, and how those countries today are controlled by NATO. And so I don't agree with it. I think that simply is these countries need to be left alone. But I know that simply is when Germany, the EU, basically all this came apart in the late 1989 when this all came apart in the 1990s. So the last 20, let's see, now it's been 30 years. So the last 30 years, Germany has shipped some of its industry outside of Germany to these countries because they can get cheap labor. And so that's what's taking place. And these countries are in badly shape because either they have inferior leadership, that is, government leaders who are willing to compromise or have been chosen. And then, like the situation in Ukraine with the Orange Revolution that took place in 2014, and how I communicated with some people in Ukraine at that point, warning them that this was not their salvation. Many was thinking simply the United States coming in would help out, and that's all baloney. The United States they use people just like other countries do. They just have a better publicity and media control that makes people think we're great people. When reality simply is that it's all about stealing from other countries. So the sad part simply is that since the Orange Revolution has taken place, and where parts of Ukraine are now in shambles, especially the eastern part where there was war, very little of it's even covered in the media anymore, and it's kind of sad, as though it's all ended when reality is not ended. It's still taking place in Ukraine. Russia's used Ukraine, especially the Soviet Union did during the 1930s and 20s under the leadership of Lenin and eventually Stalin, who stole from them and especially their grains, their wheat per se, because at one time they were the breadbasket to support Russia, that is the Soviet Union. With those, they basically stole the grain and let the people die. Most don't know this. Ukraine was treated awfully by the Soviet Union, and most don't. People don't know this. They just don't know it. Let's see if I can find articles of the. This is it here. Let me pull it up for you and let you see this. So this is what it's called. This is the history. You need to know this. This is Holodomor. This is the famine that took place across the Soviet Union and Cossack, but also with the famines that took place in the central and eastern Ukraine area. So I'm just going to run this as people don't know this. These people were killed by starvation. The Soviet Union used these people. So in 1932 to 33, they killed millions of Ukrainians. This was what we call a famine that was man-made. It was done on purpose, such as rejection of outside aids, confiscation of all household foodstuffs, and restriction of population movement. So these people couldn't go anywhere. They were restricted, and simply they were used. And I really have a really hard time with people these days, especially young people who don't know a damn thing. They just don't. They're supporting communism and thinking it's going to be the great thing when it's failed in every place on this planet, and it's killed millions and millions and millions of people. So I don't have much toleration for people who just doesn't have. But I know reason why, because most of the professors now who teach in the universities are pretty much all communists, and they push this thing as some glorious idea, and it's all nothing but a dystopia. It's not a utopia, it's a dystopia. It's destruction of mankind. So anyway, I'm kind of digressing here. So it's this estimate here from these 2 years that approximately 3 to 12 million people died in Ukraine. And this will show you the picture here. Let me show you this here. It's a map of the depopulation of Ukraine and southern Russia from 29 to 33 with territories which were not part of the Soviet state during the famine in white. So this part is not a part of the Soviet Union. This was part of the Warsaw Pact countries. This is probably Romania, Bulgaria, lower part here. And let me just tell you, what took place simply is they just came in and they stole their animals and they stole all their foodstuffs. And if there was grain in the fields, they took that also. And so few people know this, and it needs to be known. It needs to be taught. It needs to be told about, because simply as it needs to be told, because it's part of history. Because that's how we learn something, folks. We make mistakes. We learn from history. That's what I have a problem with other people who tear down Confederate memorials and all this stuff as though it's some great grandeur thing, when it was there to recognize simply as the history of the country. No country has any. No country is perfect, folks. Okay, but you need to have reminders of what things were in the past. If you don't, you forget about it and you don't know it in the future. So you people out there doing this stupid shit, that's what it is. You destroyed everything in the future per se, and people won't know because the older ones of us are be dead and gone. So you've been used, you see. But anyway, um, this is similar to some situations we can talk about the issue, what happens, such and such um, with the Ukrainians. And so it's really sad that most people don't know anything about this whole thing that took place in Ukraine. But I wanted to point this out to you just to show you that, give you an idea of what really taking place. And people need to understand this. There's another book I had or actually read online. It's Death by Government, which was done by a professor. I think it was a professor out in Hawaii. I think his last name was Rommel. I think it is something of that nature. It's been a year. It's been a while since I read the book, but it's the same thing happened by what governments do. Government is not your friend, folks. Never has been. You know that? They're the ones that kill innocent people in this world. Government itself is force, is tyranny. Most young people don't know this. The information is right here online. And, here's the sad part. Look at here. This is in 2008. The United States doesn't even recognize this as being a act of genocide. You see that? Only the countries in blue here recognize that this was a genocide. Not even the United States didn't do anything about that or even speak out about it. Tells you how far we've come down the road, haven't we? I can see that Portugal is the one here also. Use it in Colombia, Peru, Ecuador. This was like, this Australia, Mexico, and Canada. Handful of countries here, but the majority, the vast majority does not even recognize it as being a genocide. And especially the Russians don't recognize it. Neither does China, but not any countries at all in this part here, such and such. This looks like, this is probably the country of, what is that country? Armenia or Georgia, one of those two countries. That's another one that people don't know about. It's another genocide of Armenians that was taking place by the Turks in the early 1900s. Most people don't tell you that neither. So if you really, really, really know all this stuff, it's been a sad state of what governments do. And this doesn't surprise me. Wow. George Bernard Shaw, he was a Fabian. People put this guy up on a pedestal, and he is not a great man. He pushed ideas that were very much socialistic or communistic. He was a Fabian. And what I mean by Fabian? A Fabian is one who pushed the ideas, especially in Britain, to wanting other countries to change and to have control of them. So that it was part of, this is just a different, all it is just a kinder, gentler British control of the world. And so anyway, the point simply is many people put this guy on a pedestal. When you read what George Bernard Shaw is about, he's a fake. And but anyway, he's a real, he's really shows his flag. It shows his flag of being a red. So, but anyway, um, it's kind of. I just want to share this about what took place there. I know I've gotten off the tangent a little bit about Eastern European history. Um, it's interesting what took place in '67 in the Czech Republic, I think it was, or '68. The uprising there, and there was no response from the United States. You see, then didn't do anything, didn't try to help out. It just, might have said some nice speeches, but that was about it. So, people need to know. They need to know, you see. Um, they need to know the reality of what communism is all about. Um, and there's a great gentleman there. Malcolm Muggeridge is probably one of the best speakers that has talked about all these things. At first, he was attracted to communism. At first, interesting. But anyway, I wanted to share that. And then we go back. It's just so what's happening now as these countries are struggling. Let's go back to countries of Ukraine, Bulgaria, Romania. Almost all these countries are being used, and it's not a good situation per se. You see, and it's a lot of lies, and we in the West are on our way down. There's no doubt about that. We're on the way down here in America, and all the West is. You can count that on the deal with Europe, and also to do with the United States, and all the Western countries are on the way down. This is a plan. It's been a plan for a while. They speak about it, and their desire is to destroy these countries and to bring them into equality with all the third world countries. So what happens simply is that the third world countries will come up, and the first world countries will collapse. And I don't know what they're going to do with China. That's the interesting peg. I don't know if they're going to allow them to control everything, or it is simply going to destroy them also. I believe they'll probably try to destroy them, put them down too, in one way or the other. That's my thoughts on that. So back to the situation simply is that these countries have been used either by the Soviet Union or by Russia in the past, or now by NATO and the United States, you see. And what's taking place back when this took place in 2014, the situation simply was this, that, hey, we're giving you freedom. Oh, really? You're coming here to take our oil, aren't you? And that's what it's about. Part of it, I think, is to take oil. The other part, I think, is simply to build a pipeline across Ukraine, so that someone can make some money here. It's always about money, folks, and it's about taking from others when it's not yours. I remember being taught that if you didn't own it, you didn't have it, you didn't take from somebody else. But we have leaders who do that. They're so corrupt, it's ridiculous. That is the Republicans and Democrats. But anyway, I don't want to get into that diatribe. We know they're distrustful. We know they're on the wrong side. We know that simply is their day is coming, and it's coming quickly. And karma is coming, and they know it. And they're moving. They're running themselves. They're getting scared because they know it's coming. And there's no place they're going to be able to hide. The ball game's up. You see, it's over with. It's time for the age of Aquarius and Capricorn, you see. So anyway, I wanted to just do a short video on this, displaying what took place in the past. So few people know this. I would appreciate it with people who would, to actually watch these things, would share these things to other people. Because I don't know of anybody I don't know anybody that really is talking about these things anymore. I don't. And I'm not a young kid anymore also. And I'm not in favor of what, the United States does neither. I'm not. I haven't been in favor of the United States, what we've been doing for quite a while. And part of that simply was, I was younger, I saw what the United States was involved in the 1980s, and I didn't like it, what Reagan's administration did. I didn't like it when the Bush administration got involved here and there. I didn't like what took place in the Clinton administration. And it just keeps on. There's no change in the political parties, folks. That's why I don't vote. I'm not even registered anymore. I don't care to vote because I know it's a sham. But it's important for you to understand that these countries in Eastern Europe have been used. You see, they've been used. And it's either been by the West or it's been by the East with Soviet Union, or Russia has used them in one way or the other. And you just need to know that these people are quite different in many ways. They're Croats, the Croatians, the Romanians, the Moldovians, the Bulgarians. Many of these people came from the East. They came here many years, 5,000 years before, and came here and settled. The Serbs, the Slavs, all these people came, from the Czechs. These are all different groups, ethnic groups here. And part of it simply has been that they've never been united. It simply is because they're so diverse. You see, they're all different groups. You see, they're and they have different belief systems, and that might be the reason why they've never developed into a major country themselves. But there's nothing wrong with that, because that's why they're diverse. Their diversity, that is, they have different languages. And why would you want to give up your language if you were a Croatian, or if you were a Serb, or a Slovenian? They all have different, unique characteristics, and part of that is interesting to me because they're not all English, they're not all British, they're not all French, so to speak, or even Germans. They're different, and they have different traditions. And some of the neat things about these people is their music and their colorful costumes that they wear when they celebrate certain rituals or religious days. They have bright colors, and they have music, and a lot of that music is from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. You see, and they still celebrate, which is part of the folk dance. You see, all this is critical to understand that the folk, the folk is the real people, is part of the myth, but it's not a myth. You see, they will always call this a mythology, as though it's a myth. It's not real, when in reality it's truth. How words are used to fool people and thinking, oh, they're just from a methodical age. No, no, no. These people are more original, that is, than most of us. And I'm not putting down others here. I'm just saying simply is it's just a diverse area. You have the Poles, you have the Belarusians, you have also Lithuanians, Estonia, Latvia. All these they're all enormously different groups, and most are I think most are Orthodox, not all of them. There's been inroads. There might be some that are actually, I think Ukraine would be part of probably maybe the Catholic tradition. But other areas, you go further south, there's going to be a Middle Eastern flux of that. So there's especially when the Turks, the Ottoman Empire came in and seized some of these areas in Constantinople and other areas. You remember, we know that back in the 1500s that the Turks came all the way to the city of Vienna, Austria, and if Vienna, Austria had failed, it couldn't hold them. That it was curtains for Europe, you see, because there was no more. And it happened not only this time, but it was also during what is his name? The famous guy, I can't think of his name. Before the Turks came to that far east and failed to take over. And he's a well-known guy, but I can't think of his name. And he's historical, part of the Mongol type of dynasty also. And anyway, the point simply is that this is how these people are being used, and they're still used today. Most there's people who are frustrated with the promises of either NATO or the United States to be involved here, and they've been promises. That's all they've been. There haven't been any what you call fulfillments. You see. And so these countries who were once part of the Soviet state or Warsaw Pact state, they have their freedom, but the reality is they don't have economic freedom. You see. And so part of the way freedom works, folks, is that there has to be a true economic system that's there. If there's not any economics there, you usually are not going to have much freedom. It's just the way it is. Because someone at the top is controlling everything, and that means the rest are poor. I tell you a little story about when in Africa, there's an area called the Central African Republic. It's called CAR, but in the past it used to be called the Central African Empire. And the leader back in the 70s, a ruler, was a king. He did allow, the reason why I know these stories is because there were Christian missionaries there, that they would allow Christian missionaries to come there. But the king himself owned 3 or 4, castles in France. He bought the castles from French, that is in France, from the people's money, and the people there starved to death. You see, one man lived a life, a luxury, and had these. Why would he need a castle for? But that's the it's just an image thing, you see. And I'm sure that there were valuable resources in that country, and he just basically sold them, what he wanted to get, and that was happening. And that's a true story, you see. And the country of Central African Republic has no paved roads hardly at all. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. As things haven't gotten any better. The city of Bangui is, I think, the only where it's the paved roads. So if there are any roads, they're all dirt roads, you see, across most of the country, unless there's been, in the last 15 to 20 years, someone's gone in and paved some of these roads. I doubt it. The problem with Central African Republic also simply is so inland. There's no resources that comes to it a lot of times. So there's no railroad system that comes in that country. There isn't. There's no railroads that come into Central African Republic. And there's probably one airport, and that would probably be the capital city, as far as I know of. The rest is it, you see. And then we know that they were at war with Chad at one time, which is a country north of Central Africa Republic also. But anyway, I've got to digress it here. But I wanted to share with you simply is that what took place in Eastern Europe, because it's important. And my fear is that if things don't change, some of these countries are going to, and some have already beginning to voice their opinions, which is rightly so, in the European Union, and some of the things they're not going to tolerate. And I'm sure that some of these countries are going to feel the heavy hand of the EU or with NATO in some ways to make an excuse, because they are not falling in line with everything. They're not falling in line with bringing immigrants in their country, because in reality simply is that they can't take care of their own. How in the world are they going to take care of any more immigrants coming in? Which is another plan. The other key with this is you need to understand simply is this. It's the idea of bringing immigrants in to destroy the the um, the fabric of the country. That's what they do. You've seen it. Part of it is in France. You've seen it. Part of what's taking place in Greece um, is to destroy the fabric because there's certain groups that have been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, and suddenly you're bringing people in that are not from that area and have no idea the language and totally dependent upon that country. They're leeches, you see. And the key simply is those people need to go back to their countries, that is in Africa, and they need to simply throw the people out who leads them. And that's the key. But that's not what's taking place because that's the whole program is to get people to cause more and more trouble and to bring these countries down. So most of these Eastern Europeans don't want this because they see it as a red flag. And they see red flags many places simply is because of EU. So I know that one country has heard it. I don't know if they're going to get accepted in the EU or not. I think it's Croatia or Slovakia. I think it's Slovakia as the country is thinking about getting in the EU. It's interesting also since the breakup of the takeover, that is the breakup of all these countries in 1989 and 1990, you have a rebirth of many countries that used to be. Serbia used to be there, but Serbia used to be part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. So is Slovenia. So each country has its representation that is in the EU. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just pointing it out. But the sad fact is simply these people have been used. They have. And there are people who have left those countries and looking for a better way of life themselves. I know that 10 or 15 years ago, actually 10 years ago, I met someone who was from Romania here in the United States who was wanting to be a teacher. And so what I understand simply is that this guy was the man spoke of his wife being a teacher here in the county I live here in South Carolina. They were looking for teachers here. Although I think there were people here qualified. That's part of the other agenda is to, again, the mixing. I'm not saying these people are bad. That's not the point. The point simply is that the whole idea simply is that there's an agenda here. And the agenda is to basically destroy white people. That's the whole agenda. And we know it, and I know it, you see. And people say, well, that's kind of racist. And I'm like, no, it isn't. I haven't done anything wrong to anybody else, and I desire not to do anything wrong to another person. But that's what's happening here, you see. And that's their idea. They want to do this. And what they want to do is to eliminate all races and just have one race. This whole deal. And that's already taking place. Not only is there a deal with it simply is the Caucasian race, but also that now the pressure is beginning to push on the Asians, you see, here in America. So this is all part of the plan. But anyway, I'm kind of digressed there. But the point, I always want to share things because things connect. It's like a puzzle. Things connect. Things don't happen in a vacuum, folks. Things happen because they're planned that way, you see. Dark forces seek to do that, and then they manipulate people and educate them, or what I call brainwash them to believe this stuff. And you're such a bad person. And I'm like, I had nothing to do with slavery. I wasn't even living then. How could I have anything to do with that? But yet you're going to be punished because of that, because of your color, your skin, which is racism. You see. So that's what makes it wrong. I've never agreed with such and such with slavery. But this is the problem with what's going on. Simply is it's a way of stirring up people to divide each other. We're all Americans here, folks. Even though we come from Germany, France, Africa, whatever, Central America, whatever, we're all Americans. But that's the whole idea the media does is they want to split. And I would have to say this much. The politicians get away with everything because the media tells lies. That's why. So anyway, I appreciate you listening. It's about 35 minutes here and I need to go to bed. So I appreciate you listening. I hope that some of this will be educational for you. You have a good night. Take care.